all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board is now meeting in regular session, please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Sullivan?
Here.
Commissioner Webb?
Here.
Commissioner Nebaker?
Here.
Commissioner Quila?
Commissioner Quila is absent. He has an excused absence. He had to work.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Thank you. Moving on to the agenda approval. We need a motion.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is approved. We have a presentation. The Seaside Opioid Treatment Program Project, 2019.
Closer. Okay. For the record, my name is Sydney Van Dusen, and I live in Seaside, Oregon at 140 Hilltop Drive.
For the record, my name is Jennifer Worth, and I live in Portland, Oregon, and I work for CODA.
Hi, for the record, my name is Allison Noyce. I'm the Deputy Director for CODA in Portland, Oregon.
Hi, I'm Tim Hartnett, Executive Director of CODA.
Hello, Mimi Haley. For the record, I'm with the Executive Director of Columbia Pacific CCO. We have offices in Portland and Seaside.
Hello, for the record, I'm Leslie Ford. I work for Columbia Pacific CCO, doing all things behavioral health integration.
Great.
Welcome.
We'll take our seats here in a second. So appreciate you allowing us to come today to speak. Commissioner Nybecki was actually able to hear us at the Seaside City Council and suggested that we be able to come and present to you guys. So I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Monica. So we've got several people that are involved in the projects, and we'll go ahead and give an overview. And at the very end, I'll just do a quick wrap up.
So we're going to be kind of racing through this material. We're happy to answer any kind of...
Will you eat the mic for us? Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's right there. Oh, got it. Oh, uh-oh. This is trouble. So thank you very much for inviting us tonight. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk about what we're working towards in Clatsop County and the progress to date of this clinic and other activities that we've done over the last couple of years. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So I will launch. So I suspect that I don't need to talk to anybody here about the fact that there's an opioid crisis in our country, and the fact that Oregon is really strongly impacted by that, and that the North Coast is among the worst, the worst impacted in Oregon. So we're in the top 4 of heavily impacted by opioid misuse and overdose deaths in this state. So it's been a focus of the CCO right from the beginning. Okay, right on it. Got it.
Actually, the other one I think was working better, so.
Just do it, okay, all right. So just a few factoids. Opioids are a family of drugs that are developed to inhibit pain reaction. There's oxycodone, fentanyl, you've probably heard of all these. And that's what we're focused on in this particular clinic. You already had heard that this region is very heavily impacted by the opioid crisis that's happening in this country. And don't click it yet. And I want to talk a little bit about our focus. So right from the beginning of the CCO, we looked at the opioid crisis and addiction in general, and have worked very hard the last 5 or 6 years to build out the addiction services in all 3 counties in the region. So we have started detox program in Columbia County that's accessible to everybody in the region. We started non-medical pain management clinics, and we have one in each county. We developed medication-assisted treatment services, and now we have them in every county. And we've worked very hard with our primary care practitioners to educate them about the dangers of the opioid crisis and to help them change their prescribing practices and lower the dosages and amounts of pills prescribed in the community. We've had a pretty big success. We've had some reductions, but we're not all the way there. One of the things that we found when we worked down our list is that people who need methadone treatment travel to Portland. So we have a large number of folks from the 3-county area that are expending a lot of time and money going into Portland to get something that we really should be able to provide for them here locally. And that's the project. That's what we're focusing on with this particular clinic. So the project is a collaboration. So the first of the collaboration occurred within the CCO. Thank you. Working with our clinical advisory panel and our community advisory panels and the clinical leadership at the CCO. And as we work through that, we turn to CODA, which is a very well-known nonprofit in the Portland area that does all kinds of addictions work, including opioid-focused treatment, including methadone treatment. So we approached CODA and asked them if they would be interested in coming out to the coast, and they said yes. So our collaboration was born, and that's who you see here today in front of you. And I think that's it. So.
I don't need to tell you that we have scarce resources on the coast. We've been building resources over the past 6.5 years, as Leslie mentioned. And we came to realize that there's been a lot of misunderstanding and miseducation, including in the provider community, about opioid treatment and the importance of being able to provide a full array of treatment recovery options for people who are suffering from addictions. And so we have spent time working with the primary care clinics in these counties, understanding the resources that could be available, how to prescribe medications that could assist people with recovery and sustained recovery. And we think that the scope of the services that we can offer here in partnership with CODA really will allow people to get their lives back, as well as those who are currently suffering from addiction who can't take the 4 hours a day it takes to travel to Portland, and so probably are not in recovery but would prefer to be if they had a treatment option that was local.
So we're going to go through just a couple of data slides because I think that we're painting the picture, but a couple of facts that kind of stun people, even though we've all heard that we have a big opioid crisis and that Oregon is heavily impacted and that the coast is even more impacted. One of the things that puts that in relief, I think, sometimes is the fact that more people die from opioid overdoses than from car accidents. And that on an average week, every week, 5 Oregonians die from opioid overdoses. So, okay, go ahead and click it. Thank you.
Could I hold you up and ask you something? For that last slide, did you do any correlation with economic indicators? Because I see this surge or peak in particularly Columbia and Clatsop counties in 2008, 2010. We know there were really hard economic times then. So I just didn't know if you had done any of those correlations. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if they have done that, but what you can see is the blue line is the actual state of Oregon, and then the 3 lines are.
I'm just thinking of the fragile coastal economies. When I look at those, that flashes from me. I just didn't know if it were my perception or if you had any evidence that you'd looked at. And You don't need to belabor the point, I was just curious.
We don't have that direct data. We do believe that some of the work we've been doing on prescribing practices and so forth is starting to impact it, because we can see actual dosage levels go down, and that's an indication of a shift in practice. But I'm sure the economy affects it as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess we kind of talked about this, but the Oregon Health Authority ranked Clatsop County third in the state for overdose hospitalizations. And Tillamook is gone up. We're not quite sure why, but it has the highest rate per capita of drug overdose deaths in the state. So again, the North Coast is really heavily impacted. So this has turned into an urgent situation for the CCO.
So just really quickly, Dr. Huddleston, who is in charge of the ER physicians for Providence Seaside Hospital, was speaking to me about 2 weeks ago and said that every single shift she's using Narcan to save somebody, if not twice. So every single shift that she's there. That's a huge difference than when her medical practice started, 15, 20 years ago.
So for those of you who might not be aware, Narcan is a medication that can be administered that reverses the effects of opioid overdose, and we are working to equip all of our first responders with Narcan.
We're undecided as to who's going. Thank you for inviting us. I wanted to just take a second and tell you who we are and a little bit more about why we're here. For those of you who have not heard of CODA, CODA is Portland's oldest alcohol and drug treatment agency. This fall we'll celebrate our 50th anniversary. Wow. So we've been around for a good chunk of time. What's, I think, of note for you, a couple things related to this project. CODA was Oregon's first medication-assisted treatment program. Literally, its first. And to my knowledge, it's only not-for-profit in the state that provides that treatment as well. So we've been doing this a long time. Secondly, what I would want you to know is when people ask us, who we work with people who are at the deep end of the pool, which is to say they not only have problems with opioids in this instance, but they may also be tangled up in the criminal justice system, the child welfare system. They may have severe related health problems. And if I'm you, I'm wanting to make sure that my community at least has a response for people who are at that deep end of the pool. What it means for you and for us when we come into your community, we're going to want to partner substantially with the legal system, the healthcare system, all these other systems that really help people who struggle with complex problems. Just so you have some sense of CODA itself too, we are 15 programs across 10 sites in the Tri-County area. If you'd asked me 3 or 4 years ago, would we be opening a clinic here, I would have said no. It really has been with these guys pleading with us to come out here and to be the one who would start the program. And I think it's really rooted in the idea that we work across all of these systems, unlike a lot of other medication-assisted treatment program providers. So it's a little bit about why, how we got here, what we're about, and thank you again for giving us a chance to introduce ourselves tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. We've talked a little bit about CODA already and reference the opioid treatment program. I think it's important just to have said it. There are some key features of a clinic like this one. A lot of images come to mind when people hear methadone. So I do want to appreciate that this is a clinic where people, at least for a period of time, often will come every day. There's a multidisciplinary team that staffs a clinic like this. That means we have nursing staff, we have licensed medical providers, we have counseling staff. This really, a clinic like this is really quite unique in how flexible it can be in the way that it treats patients, it individualizes treatment, and really can be quite intensive for those that are really struggling with what often are some pretty serious opiate use disorders. I do want to clarify that while methadone is one of the medications we use, an opioid treatment program is actually licensed to prescribe any medicine that is approved for opioid use disorders. So there will be some individuals who do best with methadone. There will be some individuals to whom we dispense buprenorphine. Those are typically, when we opt to do that, those are folks who really need a daily structure as opposed to perhaps being able to get buprenorphine from a primary care physician, which Leslie referenced. They've done a lot of good work to really expand that in the community as well. So I really encourage you to think of this as a real complement to the great work that has been done and a real important element that we can add to the treatment community overall. I think that's great. I do want to just touch on this slide here really quickly because I think it's often, you know, we have done this for quite some time. Often the question comes up, why would you prescribe medicine when there are other treatments available? Or why don't we try the other treatments first that don't involve medicine and then give somebody medicine later? What you see in this slide is such a clear demonstration of how effective medicine is that I really like to show this to people so they appreciate how important an intervention, medication-assisted treatment, both methadone and Suboxone or buprenorphine are. Those basically flat lines represent the number of overdoses across number of overdoses across months in treatment for methadone or Suboxone, whereas that green line are the number of times a person is likely to overdose during treatment without medicine. The fact that people are risking their lives the longer we expect them to go without medicine is really quite striking. So something that I just like the group to see often so we can really appreciate how effective medicine is as a treatment mechanism and how quickly it really engages individuals. Question?
Do you deal with people with like terminal stages of alcoholism or meth? Is this primarily opioids?
So everybody that we'll treat will have an opioid use disorder because those are the medications only treat opioid use disorders. The reality of it is many patients have multiple substance use disorders concurrently, so it's not unusual for somebody to struggle with both amphetamines and opioids or both alcohol and opioids. But we wouldn't, in this type of facility, would not treat somebody who only has an amphetamine use disorder, for example. Does that make sense?
So if someone has just alcohol, they would need to seek treatment someplace else?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of 2.0 for us. We're working to, this is our sort of starting point, and what other kinds of services can we develop beyond this?
Because aren't they developing better treatments now for people with medication for?
Yep.
And we're also building out those resources throughout our provider community. So addiction resources are a major focus of the CCO at this point.
May I ask a question about the CCO? Isn't the state looking at that? Is that going to be affected? Is this going to be affected by those decisions in the future?
The state
Is this this is standalone? This is not something connected with CBH or?
No, it's a standalone program, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So what, okay, does that mean there's no CCO involvement in this
The
proposal?
CCO is a funder,
Oh.
but
An
the
initial
program
funder,
is
or
run
will
by
they
CODA.
be an ongoing?
Pardon?
Are they a startup funder, or will it be ongoing?
The CCO is providing the funds to renovate the facility to make sure that it's able to turn on the lights, and then we will be providing reimbursement for the services that are provided.
They pay us.
You think?
Pay them and they will come.
Next.
I think something really important to appreciate about the opportunity this presents. We talk a lot, in conversations like this, we focus a lot on the patients and the severity of their illness and their need. I think what's really important to understand also about the impacts here is we know that individuals stabilize quickly on medications, and when they stabilize on medications, the community benefits by reduction in criminal activity, the community benefits by people getting jobs, becoming taxpayers. This really is how your community becomes a healthier place, by helping these folks who really are just so burdened by the disorder that they're not meaningfully contributing. We know medicine helps people become contributors to the communities they live in.
If we were to have this program in our community, would that help us in the future with problems in the jail?
Are you asking, like, as far as the potential to
Have another
reduce-
resource to aid us in
Yeah,
in
so
caring for-
if we had a program such as this, then when we have, and I don't want to speak for Chief Deputy Williams, but when we have programs like this available within the community, when we are releasing inmates from jail, we're able to make those connections, provide those community resources, so that way they can see successful programs and be successful as far as,
Reducing recidivism.
Exactly. Mhm.
It's part of what I meant when we work extensively with Washington, Multnomah, and Clackamas County Community Corrections, law enforcement. So this is right in our wheelhouse.
Just another note too, similar to what Dr. Huddleston was saying. She was saying, I'll have at least 1 or 2 referrals for you daily for the clinic. And so I was actually hoping if maybe Tim or Allison can explain what happens when a referral comes in and who do they actually see, because the process, because that question has been asked of me.
It's so a pretty typical experience is we have worked really hard programmatically to make our programs as accessible as possible and frankly as quickly as possible. The moment somebody says they're ready for treatment and interested in medicine, we want to give it to them. So there's typically a screening from a drug and alcohol or a master's level trained clinician that is essentially just about understanding a patient's needs, understanding what their resources are that they have available, and then we work often the same day to put them in front of a licensed medical provider, who either a nurse practitioner or a physician who has addictions medicine training. That individual can really initiate the medication and start it on the same day. So people will typically receive medicine the same day they request treatment, and can take just a matter of days really to get to a therapeutic dose, where then we're seeing them every day. We're monitoring their response to the medicine very quickly and very carefully. And depending on the patient and which medicine we're using, they tend to get to what we call a holding dose rather quickly.
It's probably worth it to tell you what the medicine does. It really does one thing. It reduces the cravings for opioids, period. That's the therapeutic purpose of the medicine. The counseling and the other services we provide help to rebuild a life. It's not a magic bullet, it's not a cure, but it's a critical tool that we want to have. But that's what it does, just so you know.
Another question that was asked us from the community was from our medics and our fire. They're saying, if you're having this clinic, are we going to have that many more calls because of having the clinic in town? And Tim actually said in the city council meeting in Seaside, for every call that they'll get from the clinic, they will be saving them 2 on the streets. So again, there's so many patients that don't have the access. Currently, we're spending $800,000 a year, the CCO, to transport 90 patients to Portland and back every day. In fact, if you talk to Jeff Hazen at Sunset Empire, it almost bankrupted the bus because they were not able to keep that contract up because so many patients needed it. So automatically there's $800,000 a year that can go back into our community and other programming. The other thing that I think that is important to know as well is that both Providence and CMH are on board and they know what's going on, and they've asked for CODA as we get further into the process to collaborate with their physicians. So several of their physicians would like to be part of the program so they can help their patients get more support services. And CODA is willing to serve not just Oregon Health Plan patients, but anyone. If you're a cash payer, if you're a private payer, if you're OHP member. So I think that makes a big difference. This slide is obviously very easy to explain. Basically, we have gone out to the community and said, anyone who'd like to learn more or know more, please ask. Jen and I have done a few of the smaller community educations. We're actually going to be at SDDDA in about 2 weeks. But if anyone needs education, we're here to give them anything we can and also connect them with our experts here as well. So these people have been working literally like 12, 15 hours a day to get everything lined up so that we can get it open and get construction started in the next week or two. The actual facility will be in Seaside, and it's, I laugh, the old Kent Price Realty building, right between Motel 6 and Ruby's Grill. Talked to Jeff Hazen at the bus, and he is purposely making it so that the bus will be able to go by there hourly, so that any of the patients who need the transportation will be able to take the bus system as well, and from anywhere in Clatsop County to get the services.
So help me understand, because I came to Portland in 1983 and CODA was already there, and you've managed to survive all the ups and downs and ins and outs of the changes in healthcare funding, which is no small thing.
So far, so good.
Knock on wood, we say. So I share the concern about CCOs in the future and what's happening in the state legislature and the lack of designated funding for addiction treatment in the proposed legislation that's going on. I mean, I really want to, we're all clear, I think, that there's a huge problem here. So you're building an inpatient facility, an outpatient facility?
It's outpatient.
So it's outpatient facility. Do you have an ask from us? You just want us to know?
We don't at this time, but if you give us a minute.
Put that on. Thus showing how CODA has survived. No, just, well, you know, it's really wonderful. It's so inspiring to know that people will have hope and appropriate care. And I love that you describe it as medicine, because sometimes I've heard some unsympathetic people say, oh, it's substituting addictions. Well, if it's medicine because it's affecting, I assume, the brain chemistry, so that the addiction is stilled, that's really different than a substitute addiction. So I appreciate your making that distinction. I'm delighted that you've come to see us. Appreciate the chair's inviting you to let us know what you're doing. What you're doing is vitally important. I think we're all grateful for it. Thank you.
So I do have several questions. Okay. When will you open? If you have any idea.
Our target date is end of summer, early fall.
Okay. And now I've been hearing about some complaints from people in Seaside worried about what this will do to their businesses. And can you address what this looks like as far as when clients come? I'm assuming they don't hang around. They come for an appointment like you would go to any clinic. But would you please describe that experience when someone comes?
Yeah, people are generally worried about what some people refer to as loitering.
Uh-huh.
And our policy as an organization is you come, you take care of your business, and then you go about your business. We won't be tolerating loitering lots of times people are worried who have been underexposed to clinics about whether they'll contribute to an increase in drug abusers moving here or drug traffickers. Will they move here? Absolutely no evidence of that happening anywhere in the country. But people ask. They, quite understandably wonder about it. But it's not something that actually happens.
So in your other facilities, you don't have a problem with people just hanging around? They don't do that?
Yeah, one of the really great opportunities here was that we got to work with the architects to design the building and all of the layout and the flow. So we really were quite intentional about really not restricting how somebody moved through the building so that they could come in. If their only reason to be there was for medicine, you come in quite quickly and leave if you need both medicine and have a counseling appointment. So the way that we expect people to move through the building is fairly controlled and really doesn't support a lot of congregating. It's not, I like to, when we talk about the issue of loitering, I think it's important to understand it's not just a policy. It's actually part of our rules. Our federal rules say we must have policies and practices that discourage loitering, that reduce any possibility of diversion or behaviors that lead to diversion. It's really a very, very controlled type of setting with a lot of regulation that really expects us to be thoughtful about that. And then I would just speak to CODA in general as somebody, an organization who's really quite invested in being good neighbors. We're here because we think we can help the community to be better. That means not just helping the people that are inside our clinic doors, but really helping to educate the people around us, helping to really improve the circumstances that we're in. So.
I'd also like to say, just keep in mind, the clinic is also going to be bringing professionals to your community. We're going to be hiring and staffing up the clinic. And we're also going to have those professionals that are going to be coming into the community, buying coffee, buying food, contributing to the economy. So that's another piece that the clinic does bring, is that support. And Sydney and I are doing another presentation for the Business Development Association to kind of answer some more of these questions to help support the business community or in that area.
How many people in what professions are you planning on hiring?
We're going to have a clinic director. We're going to have some therapists. We're going to have a medical director, at least 10 to 15 staff. And then if there's on-call folks that need to come to do shifts, and then we have UA technicians. So about 10 to 15 staff to start with.
Good luck recruiting them. Have you talked with other healthcare providers in the region about their issues in hiring?
We know it's going to be a challenge, so we're trying to think creatively about how to get through that, and we are going to work on that.
It's a really good point. In fact, those questions have come up, but CMH has actually been working with a recruiter the CCO provided, and if you talk to Janet Shacker, who's in charge of staffing the positions, she'll let you know that they're actually, for the first time, having plus physicians. They are overstaffed at this point, for the very first time.
Who is?
CMH. They're not Providence, but CMH.
Woo! Well, one of the reasons I ask is that I wondered if you had considered using visiting nurses and those kinds of services, because with our wonderful location, sometimes I've always thought visiting nurses could, that's the wrong term, contract nurses who come for
Locum tenens?
Locums is what I think they call them.
Yeah, locum tenens.
Here out of Portland.
We also want to make sure that we can have whoever we find to be able to come and see the work that CODA is already doing in Portland.
in other places,
Part of
yeah.
that, tours, see what that system looks like, so that we
Right.
can give them that support for coming here.
And so there will be some kind of a management presence from your home office in Portland?
Yeah,
You'll actually
absolutely.
be. And you have, I'm sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
you've already secured the building? Have you gotten approval from the
council.
zoning folks and?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to be regulated by the state and the federal government, so we have the state approval and we're working through, CODA already has their OTP licensure, so we just have one more process to go through with SAMHSA, which is
The,
the whole process that they're working on now.
I was in the car the other day and caught a bit of an interview, I think it was OPB, but I believe they were discussing the lawsuits, the national lawsuits against the pharmaceutical companies that helped create this disaster. And they said that one of the changes is that they are looking towards criminal charges against them. And when I heard that, the question to you is, my impression of that statement is that the tide is turning towards looking at, instead of blaming the person who falls into this addiction, that it's a bigger system-wide problem, and that there are people that were in the know and were responsible and should be held accountable. Do you see that as a sea change in the culture?
We're now getting into our views on sort of public affairs, not our area of expertise. I would just say amen.
That's all I wanted to hear. Thank you.
And in fact, I think this week, charges got dropped on one of the manufacturing companies, so it's actually happening.
That's probably what I was hearing. That they were probably referring to that. Okay, thank you.
Do you have a sense of how many clients you will be serving?
We're looking at a capacity of around 300. And that's based on what we know about the numbers and kind of looking at, the PCO data that was given to us, planning, on that to start with.
In your catchment area for those estimated 300 patients?
Clatsop County and
Tillamook County as
Tillamook?
well.
And maybe parts of Columbia County that are closer to Clatsop County.
And I want to applaud the folks that work with Jeff Hazen to get the transportation piece of this. I think that's going to be crucial also. Thank you.
I have one other?
Yeah.
Quick. And what is the treatment period usually? So you're saying 300 cases at one time, and how long does everybody stay?
People can be on medicine, frankly, indefinitely. There's it's a medication that's very safe and effective to take for years, and some people do, some people don't. The way to understand that 300 number, though, is to appreciate the way a clinic like this works. When people are very early in treatment and they're likely not stable, they may still be using opioids or other drugs, they don't have a safe place to live. That's the group that we're seeing every day to provide medicine to. The way that a clinic like this works, though, is as that patient starts to stabilize, as they abstain from using all their substances, as they actively participate in treatment, as they develop a recovery community, that person then doesn't have to come see us every day. They start to get what you'll hear referred to as take-home doses. So somebody will go from seeing us every day to seeing us a few times a week to eventually, for somebody who's quite successful and stable, we'll see that person once a month. So a 300-person census for a clinic doesn't necessarily mean 300 people move through that clinic every day. Typically, you'll see about a third of that patient population really not come in every day. So,
I have a question about buprenorphine. Does it have, I'm not sure this is the right term, does it have an antigen that keeps the person who's taking it from, you had said that it stops the craving, but if someone chooses to use while they are taking it, is there an adverse effect? No.
It's an agonist, not an antigen, and it just blocks some
Agonist.
of the effects of a regular opioid.
So taking the buprenorphine would block a high.
And the
From-
craving. as
And
Tim said
grading.
earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Well, thank you very much. Glad you're here.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate your support.
We now have business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 3-minute presentation. You can see our beautiful new clock. About a 3-minute presentation about any item on the agenda except public hearings or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. This is wonderful. I can read everyone's name this time. Mary Olson.
Mary Olson. I'm the outreach coordinator for the Arch Cape Forest. I don't know if you guys have heard about that project. My job is to increase awareness and support for the proposed Arch Cape Forest, which the Arch Cape Water District is seeking to purchase to enhance water quality in the watershed where they get their drinking water from. So they have applied for a Forest Legacy grant through the U.S. Forest Service, which would cover, if awarded, the majority of the purchase price. However, they're still seeking funding to make up the difference between the grant and the purchase price. So they're pursuing a variety of opportunities to come up with that, and one would be an ask for the county. The benefits of them owning the watershed is that they would manage it as a community forest based on the community forest model. I'm not going to go into detail on that, but you can find information about that on the website, which is archcapeforest.org. Also, managing with clean water in mind has multiple benefits, not only for people who drink the water, but also for fish and wildlife. So the forest would be managed through an advisory council, which has yet to be formed, and they would decide the goals, but sustainable harvest is planned if the watershed is purchased, and the goal for that being to offset some of the costs with sustainable harvest, providing revenue for projects like road maintenance and thinning. So anyways, we'll have 2 representatives at the budget committee meeting next week. I won't be there because I have to work. My other job is I work full-time for Clatsop Soil and Water Conservation District as a technician. And I just have to put in a little plug about the great work that we do there. I'm just beginning work on invasive species surveys and control, and I brought you each a book so you can read up on the weeds we need to be looking for in this county. In addition to that, I also do education and outreach on invasive species and provide training to folks such as timber company staff. 2 weeks ago, I did a training for the county road crews so they can keep their eyes open for these weeds we need to be looking for. And that's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just add, the commissioners got a letter that's dated April 5th on this matter of the Arch Cape Forest.
It's also in your budget binder.
Next, we have Jeannie Peterman.
I'm Jeannie Peterman. I got a call from Mark Cox of Agile Design, Warrenton Data Design. He's wanting to build out in our business park and start a business there. And I told him, I said, you know, I have been in the area since 1984. I was in the Oregon Army National Guard full-time and raised my children here, and they all went to Clatsop and then on to other schools. And my son, of course, he's a botanist, so he didn't stay in the area. My daughter's a nurse. Well, now I have a grandson graduating from Utica University in New York with a degree in cybersecurity. And he's going to have to move away to find a job. My grandson, number 2, is a computer gamer, and he built his own computer at a young age. And he wants to go into computers, but there's nothing here for them. And so when I read the thing in the newspaper, the article about Warrenton Data Design wanting to build there and open shop, I thought, we need this for our kids and our grandkids. Anyway, I told him I would come talk, and I just think we need the business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Dale Mosby?
Hello there. My name is Dale Mosby. I'm a Arch Cape resident.
Could you state your address as well?
It's 31897 Ocean View Lane, Arch Cape. And I'd like to speak to you just briefly about the proposed North Coast Data and Technology Center in Warrenton. I work here on the coast. I work in the software industry and I work for IBM. The only reason I'm allowed to be a full-time resident of Arch Cape is because we have high-speed broadband here. It's pretty good. I'm happy with it, but I'd like something faster and I'd like more choices. This is an example of what having some sort of infrastructure can do for the area. Otherwise, I would certainly be living in Portland or some other place. Everyone seems to say that we need full-time, good-wage jobs here to do some things besides just the tourist economy. And the business park there would be an example of just that. So I'd like you to do everything you can to support it. That could be zoning, utilities, roads, building out a broadband infrastructure, things like that would be really wonderful. I'm here spending money full-time. I don't just come here on weekends like the tourists. When I go out and have dinner and stuff like that, it's not a seasonal thing. And I think it'd be good to have more of a high-tech workforce that would be like that. There's also a lot of other spin-offs from something like this. You get a core infrastructure of high-tech workers. They're going to form new jobs, mentor people. Other companies are going to come. Once there's this core to support that, you'll see a lot of other things good happen. So if you can do anything to support this, I'd sure like to encourage it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
BJ Black?
Good evening. My name is BJ Black. I live with my wife Andrea on 1513 Honeysuckle Loop in Warrenton. I've spent most of the last 2 decades as a software engineer and as a network engineer. And I've come today to speak also in support of the data center. My wife and I moved here last year, and a few weeks after we moved in, we found out, hey, there's a guy looking to build a data center within walking distance of our apartment, which is really exciting, especially since tomorrow I'm going to be flying to Austin, Texas to go visit the data center out there. Precisely because there are things I need to be on site to do, and I can't do them remotely. So while I can mostly work remotely here, I would much rather have the equipment on site. The only other thing that I would mention is that because there is a consideration of infrastructure investment, as a network engineer, one of the things I can say is that anything you put in the ground does have a time limit on it. So anything that exists today may not quite be up to the task of providing real honest-to-God data services to the rest of the world, especially since networks as they exist today here have been designed with the idea of consuming data rather than delivering data. And so a lot of the design considerations are a little bit different, the use case is a little bit different, and in building that infrastructure and making it more of a public good, as was alluded to earlier, that tide will lift all boats. And so I definitely encourage the the commission to consider investment in that area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick Rauda? Did I say that correctly? Ruda.
Hi, I'm Nick Ruda. I live 7 Skyline Place up the hill here in Astoria. I've worked 25 years in data center technology companies. So like the previous comments, I would be heavily in favor of asking the commission to give a fair hearing to proposals and make sure that they're in keeping with what we want our community to be. But I've already heard tonight people talking about need to diversify our fragile economy, wanting to have good jobs for our children. I have 2 young girls here in school at the middle school and the high school in Astoria, and encourage them as women to go into science and technology and engineering, those types of careers. But it's important for people to have opportunities to do that. Like my peers here, perhaps, who I didn't realize were in the community, there are few jobs in technology that can be done remotely. If you bring technology opportunities to the region, then it brings those good jobs here. So we work in an industry that serves customers worldwide and has revenues flowing worldwide, and as was already noted, we then spend those monies here in the community. So unlike just recycling revenues around paycheck to paycheck within Clatsop County, we're bringing net new monies into the county. And there's obviously opportunities for construction, which many local people are qualified to do. Then there's long-term opportunities for people to work in high-tech, well-paying jobs, highly educated roles, and they don't have to leave the community to find those types of opportunities. So that's more or less what I wanted to say. I'm happy to support it, happy to answer questions based on my expertise in the area if you like. Otherwise, I'm going to run and go look after my 2 little girls and make sure they're getting their homework done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope I'm saying this right. Pamela Matson McDonald?
Hi there. I really support that data center because there's not enough opportunities for young people here. And it would be a great opportunity for employment as well as having broadband faster here, because I have to use that for when I send articles off to the publications I write for. And that's all I have to say. Please support it.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have David Ambrose.
Dave Ambrose, 1179 Jerome Avenue here in Astoria, and I'm the chairman of your Arts Council of Clatsop County, which is one of your advisory committees. But we're a pretty ambitious bunch, and I wanted to apprise you of 3 things that we're working on right now. The first is cruise ship tours. We're trying to support and promote our arts community to formulate some tours for people coming on the cruise ships to participate in the arts here in our county. We look at that as a way to generate more income for our arts community and to bring a greater interest from the cruise ships, from people coming here in what we're doing in the county. Second, we're hoping that we can have what we're calling an arts summit next fall, late fall, and it will be focused on the business of the arts. How artists can improve the way that they market their products, how they can work with the financial end, because a lot of artists aren't really that concerned about their finances in particular. So we're hoping that we can use this arts summit in the fall as a stepping stone to the third thing that we're working on. As you know, we did a pretty comprehensive survey in 2015 to show the economic benefits of what the arts bring to our county, and that came to about $13.7 million just for 2015. There's another cycle coming up in 2021 that we want to participate in, and we're hoping that this Art Summit will be a stepping stone to get a lot more of our nonprofit organizations in the arts and our artists interested in participating in this to make a better feel for what's going on with the economics. We are going to meet with your budget director on Friday to work out a way to get the policy straight for how the county, who has granted us $5,000 in the budgets, how we can spend that money and stay within the policies of the county. So I'll give you an update on that when we have that meeting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That concludes business from the public. Moving on to the consent calendar.
Madam Chair, I move adoption of the consent calendar.
I second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Ayes have it. It is approved. Now we come to commissioners' reports.
Madam Chair, I have a point of order addressed to the County Council. County Council, we've had some discussion off the record of the duration and content of commissioner reports. We haven't had a motion in public to discuss it. And so I know you had a point you mentioned after I gave my report last time that I needed to observe certain constraints. And rather than have us do that off the record, I'd like the chance for the public to hear deliberation if we want to constrain the content and duration of commissioner reports. So am I correct, Council, that we need to have a motion that's discussed before any kind of constraint can be imposed?
Your rules give the chair authority to control the meeting. If you feel that there should be specific rules on time other than stated, then you would need to have a motion to do that, to change your rules. And currently your rules are what have been in place since 2013 or 12. I'm not sure exactly when.
Something like that. It's just that our practice has changed. And I think that if we want to discuss this and we want to deliberate on this and we want to come to a conclusion, if we can define problems that people see or solutions that we can consider, I think that's a reasonable way to proceed. But to not have a public discussion of what I think is a pretty significant change in our commission practice, I think should have a public discussion.
What I have asked for is that the commissioners' reports at this point on the agenda is limited to 5 minutes, and those are liaison assignments. We have added good of the order at the end of the agenda so that if you go to a meeting or there's something that you need to bring up as a matter of business, perhaps to go on a subsequent agenda, that can be discussed then.
We've had some pretty...
But I think that we...
Oh, pardon me.
I think that if there is further discussion about this, I think it should be in a work session.
So then perhaps we should have a work session, because I looked at the materials that were distributed by our parliamentarian. On page 8, talks about if we're having longer meetings, and there's a concern about having longer meetings, it says other things may, and I'm quoting, other things may be tried to shorten meetings, but there comes a time in most, they say cities, but county, when the volume of business grows to the point that more frequent meetings are necessary. So if we're concerned about the duration of our meetings or what we're covering in that, I think it's a good idea to have a more wide-ranging discussion on that. I think that'd be a better way to proceed. It would make for better teamwork and really a more effective board.
that more effectively serves the people of Clatsop County. So I'm not quite sure how you want to proceed.
I think I'd like to proceed with commissioners' reports at this time. Commissioner Sullivan?
Okay. Today I went to the Board of Forestry, and I have brought back two things that I gave all of you a handout. One is the Oregon Departments of Forestry. They had a presentation on climate change, and this was their PowerPoint. I think this is similar to what I forwarded on from the FTLIC meeting. And then I wasn't able to stay because I needed to return for this meeting tonight. On the marble, they've been discussing marble murrelets for a while, and this was a kind of a end point of that study. Today in the Board of Forestry, and of course they have their agenda and all the materials online, so if anybody's interested they can go to the Oregon Department of Forestry and look all of these things up. But Jason Miner, who's the Director of Natural Resources for this state of Oregon, came and spoke today, and he let the board know that the governor strongly supports a habitat conservation plan, which is something that the Clatsop County also supports, and also that the governor is behind wanting to have strategies to meet the challenges of climate change in all different aspects of county government, or the state government. The FDLIC, which is the Forest Trust Land Advisory Committee, sent out their, FDLIC always has a time on the Board of Forestry agenda to talk. And generally what is talked about there is discussed in the FDLIC meeting, and then it is brought to the board by the chair. For me, I didn't get that notice of what he was going to say until 8:30 this morning, which I didn't even look at before I went into the meeting. So I thought that was unfortunate. But we have an ongoing challenge within the FTLAC in that Clatsop County voted to be out of the Lynn County lawsuit, and because we believe in the greatest permanent value, that we believe that forests need to be managed in a balanced way, that we need revenue, we need habitat, and we need recreation. And that it seems to be at odds with the folks that voted in for the Lynn County lawsuit, which believes there was a contract dispute, and that's as simple as that. And so any communication that comes out of FTLIC is always needs to be mindful of what the Lynn County lawsuit, they don't want to discuss something that may conflict with what their case is with the state. And so it's a very delicate thing. And it looks like, according to the letter from Chair Yamamoto from Tillamook County, that the Lynn County lawsuit may be coming to trial in October. We will see. Whatever the outcome is, I am fairly certain from the people that I talked to that no matter what the outcome is, there will be an appeal. So they expect this lawsuit to go on for a number of years. And so in the meantime, there's just a delicate dance between how these policy decisions get made. But I continue to think that it's very important to look at the holistic value of a public forest: revenue, habitat, and recreation, among some of the things that a forest offers. Susan Morgan, who is helpful with natural resources from Association of Oregon Counties, recently sent out a schedule of the amount of revenue that Clatsop County receives from timber. It's by the different districts that get what the amounts are. It's also, it kind of can give you a heads up of what the potential sales are coming up. You know, the different lots of land are named and what the revenue is expected from that. So I thought that that was interesting. And one thing I want to say about Habitat Conservation Plan is one of the things about that is that it allows us to have certainty in revenue. And I think that's important because so much depends on this revenue from the forests that if we can establish a Habitat Conservation Plan that allows for certainty for the Endangered Species Act, then that will potentially stop lawsuits and interruption of sales of timber down the way. So that's one of the main reasons why we think a Habitat Conservation Plan is important. And that's one of the reasons that I continue to go to the Board of Forestry and the FDLEC, just to listen to what they have to say and also to be present that that we're part of that picture. So that's all I have on the forestry thing. Tomorrow there's a Northwest Senior Disability Services meeting. There are going to be budget discussions. It seems like a lot of the thing that Northwest Senior Disability Board does is one of the main things is to provide, besides providing other services, but also providing meals for the senior population in these 5 county areas. And that can be complicated too, and that is the kitchen in workable order, what contract, who's going to deliver that food. We're very fortunate here in Clatsop County to have the Warrenton Food Service Program, the Astoria, conjugate meals, and places for people to go and get meals. And so we're really fortunate in that way. And that's all I have for the commission report. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Webb?
I'd like to make a comment about Commissioner Sullivan's report. I was at my desk at 8:30 this morning and received a copy of David Yamamoto's letter to the Forestry Board, and I was quite taken aback at how it appears to completely ignore environmental concerns about forest practices in Oregon. And it looked to me like it had been written by a timber lobbyist. And I'm wondering if there is, since were we the only county that opted out of the Lynn County lawsuit?
We were the only Board of Commissioners that opted out. There are special districts within this county that stayed in the lawsuit. So, but yes, we were the only Board of Commissioners that opted out of the Lynn County lawsuit.
Do you feel it would be, is there anything we as a board can do? I mean, this letter from Yamamoto, as I say, was so strident. And excuse me, I shouldn't say strident, it was just incredibly one-sided. Do you think it would be useful for us to write a letter advocating more on the environmental side?
Well, I think that, I think when litigation is involved, it makes everything much more complicated. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of money on the line for this. And every FDLEC meeting has started out with the statement from their attorneys that certain comments, they're very mindful of what they say and how they say it. And I think that's reflected in that letter too. I don't think that, for me, that doesn't change the value that people have that want to go hunt in the forest, want to take their families camping, want to do their share to help endangered species and get revenue. I don't think that changes that, but I think that they have to be, they have to do what they feel they need to do in order to protect their side of the litigation. And we're not involved on that. But that doesn't change, I don't think, the values of what's important in the forest. So I don't know. I think perhaps in the future, I don't know. When I go to the Board of Forestry, I just reiterate, that we believe in those things. And they are in the middle of making policy for the Forest Management Plan and for the Habitat Conservation Plan, and that has been ongoing for a long time. It's going to continue to be, and So I think we just have to continue to watch it
And you don't think there's anything that we should actively be doing?
Well, I think going to the meetings is active.
No, no, I meant beyond the work that you're doing. Is there anything that we as a board, do you think would be appropriate?
I don't know, I guess that would be up to the board.
Commissioner Webb, do you want to make a motion?
Isn't that interesting? I'd like to speak as well. Because
have-
I went to the Board of Forestry and the Council of Forest Trustlands meeting as well. And this was a
Commissioner
divided,
Thompson,
this was a
you would have a
divided
chance to
vote.
discuss after the motion?
This was a divided vote that we have made, and we are of divided minds. So we can make a motion, we can do this, but I think there's probably a better way to proceed where we look to find common ground and really discuss this issue before we slam through another divided vote and further divide our county.
Well, I don't think.
Hey, just a moment. Commissioner Webb, did you want to make a motion?
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
I move that the Board of County Commissioners of Clatsop County deliberate about an appropriate response to a letter that was recently sent to the Board of Forestry by Commissioner David Yamamoto of Tillamook County. That we should deliberate a response. I think that's as far as I should go. What do you think?
Did you get that, Teresa?
If I did, is there a second?
Could you read it back, please?
Commissioner Webb moved that the board deliberate about an appropriate response to a letter that was recently sent to the Board of Forestry by David Yamamoto of Tillamook County.
Okay. Is there a second? Motion dies.
Okay.
Commissioner Webb, your report?
I have three things. First of all, I continue to attend something called County College, which is put on by the Association of Oregon Counties. It has 5 or 6, it's a one-year program, and there are 5 or 6 topics that you spend a couple of days learning about. Most of them take place in Salem or Corvallis, and I'm finding them incredibly enriching. And I just attended a session on economic development and learned about the many state economic development resources that are available to us, and made wonderful contacts, and I think it's really going to be able to enhance my service on this board. Last night, Commissioner Thompson and I had the wonderful opportunity to tour the new 5-apartment building that is being funded in collaboration with a number of partners, which will be available for women with children who are recovering from addictions. It was a very exciting enterprise. It's a true partnership. It's Gobi, and it's Gobi, and CBH, and NOAA.
Or Oregon Housing and Community Services too?
The Oregon Northwest Oregon Housing Authority.
But Oregon Housing and Community Services, I think, as well.
Oh, that's true. They had a piece of it too. Anyway, it's a very exciting thing because it's an honest to goodness county collaboration, and I'd like to thank our previous board for basically donating a foreclosed property to this effort. So the county commitment to this was really substantial. And it's going to be very exciting. And I think one of the most exciting things about it is that it was a celebration of something done. There was kind of a bit of a dinner party afterwards, and it was very satisfying to be in a room full of people who made this exciting project happen from a probably 6 or 8 organizations, real public partnership. I have been a liaison to the North Coast Tourism Studio, which was an almost year-long effort to develop more structure to tourism, to the provision of tourism services on the coast, on the North Coast. And Tita Montero, who is a counselor from Seaside, and I are co-chairing an effort to bring more to elected officials and to the community and to businesses to bring a message of how valuable tourism is in our economy and to sway some of the negative issues. And you'll be hearing more about that from us. My last thing, excuse me, I didn't write this down. The Northwest Oregon Housing Authority is, and for those of you who followed last year, with our previous chair was our liaison, the staff lawsuit that occurred last year has been refiled, and I'm trying to work with our council to understand the extent to which our board has to, what's the right word, instruct me about how to proceed, because it's the NOAA is actually physically located. It's an employee complaint, and NOAA is located in Clatsop County, so it will go through our court system. And so I'm hoping to be able to come back to you all in a way that involves you in the process and most of all instructs me about how to vote. That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson. Thank you. I want to echo what Commissioner Webb said. It's the most fun I think I've had in terms of public appearances. There were some folks that I want to publicly acknowledge who were not held up and honored. They thanked the County Board of Commissioners. I said we were smart enough to listen to what our good staff told us to do. So to the acting county manager, to Suzanne Johnson of Assessment and Taxation, to Sirpa Duos, who work long and hard every day to help us do the right thing. This was a joyful celebration, because what's happened is a house that was really derelict and was filled with garbage and came back to us as a delinquent tax property was transformed, and that's the operative word, because the garbage was cleaned out. Randy Stemfer took it down to the studs, re-insulated it in and out, re-sided it, did everything to redesign it to be functional and beautiful so that people can heal and families can become whole and healthy. We're part of that, all of us in this community. We're honored, we're overjoyed to be part of that. But here's the best part. I called Senator Johnson, Representative Mitchell, and Congresswoman Bonamici to share our joy and our success. What I'm hoping is that Kevin Campbell from Gobi will come to the Association of Oregon Counties and share it with all of the other county commissioners and judges, so that what we've done here can be a model all over the state. I have goosebumps. Can be a model all over the state. And I'm hoping that when we propagate this, it will make such a difference all over. So hooray for us. Hooray for us, and thank you, staff. Thank you. We're so grateful to you. And to be there and to share in that joy, that community feeling was enormously positive. And it had to do with housing, didn't it? It was great. Commissioner Webb and I also went to another occasion together was up at Patriot Hall. Energy Trust of Oregon is talking about how to do building the future with the path to net zero buildings. So this is, again, an opportunity for us to be environmental leaders as we're looking at not only commercial structures, also housing, because we're going to keep going until we really honor this planet and honor each other by doing housing and commercial structures well in a way that's energy efficient. Went yesterday to the Northwest Health Preparedness Organization, and the reason this matters is that there are coastal partners who are organizing and have been organizing for a number of years to be able to respond with medical care in cases of emergency. And we're looking at the Coast Communications Project. Our county emergency manager is part of this. Emergency response people all over the county and beyond are looking at how to be effective, how to be linked, how to be prepared. I think what I spoke for during that meeting was the fact that we county commissioners should also know what our role is and should have equipment and rehearsal so that in case of emergency situations, we know how to respond, we know how to participate so that we can honor the voters who put us in office to do the job of being responsible for what happens in those cases. So we're looking at that as well. There's also, I've told you about other emergency plans. I want to speak to the balance of things. I also attended the Council of Forest Trust Lands. I was very clear, Commissioner Sullivan is Clatsop County's representative. I spoke for the moderate middle. And what I heard in response was Coos County Commissioner John Sweet really almost breaking down because the Georgia Pacific Mill in his county has closed. Coos County has the third worst poverty rates in Oregon, and they have child abuse, domestic violence, and substance abuse related to poverty. So the rest of the Council of Forest Trust Land members are looking at how do they help provide services for their people. Where does the revenue come from? So I've been talking, long and hard till people may be tired of hearing it, but looking at how do we add value to our natural resources industry. We're hoping to build housing. I continue to work with timber companies and the Congresswoman's staff and local economic development people, and one shining star who's hoping to build modular housing. Because if we can build modular housing here, if we can add value to our natural resources, then we have a hope to build our way, that's a good pun, right? Build our way into an economy that works better for everybody, and then we can have the balance. But we have to be able to help people have a decent living. We have to have an adequate tax base because the challenges aren't going to stop, and we have to heal the planet. So we can't pick one, it has to be all of it together. When I went to Cedar, I think I told you this already, $1 million for the business that was given the award for economic impact in the community, Lewis and Clark Timberlands. I mean, this is a part of our life, our heritage, and I hope our future, that we use each other and the place well. There are other things. I wanted to say this one thing. Monday, April 29th, 2019, Astoria High School Student Commons on Marine Drive. The Navy is going to accept comments throughout the public period because they're doing exercises in the ocean that may affect marine mammals. It's about the continued use of active sound navigation and ranging, known as sonar, and explosives while employing marine species mitigation measures. So if people care about marine mammals, Monday, October 29th at Astoria High School. I'm trying to look at what time it is, probably in the evening sometime.
I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with that.
I got a letter. I got a letter about this, so I'm sure you can look it up, but it's coming soon. So folks would be concerned about that, marine
You
mammals.
said October 29th?
Sorry, April, did I say October? She's oriented to time and place. No, April 29th, sorry. April 29th. They don't give that much notice, do they? Thank you. All right, that's it for now.
I have nothing to report, but I would ask the commissioners, since we moved the commissioners' reports higher up on the agenda so that the public could hear what our liaison assignments are, I would ask the commissioners to limit the reports to your liaison assignments. If you have further things to say, that can come at another time. County managers report.
Sure. So on Monday, the 22nd, the interview panel conducted interviews for the CMGC contract. There were for the CMGC contract for the jail. There were 4 firms that submitted, and the interview panel interviewed 2 of the most qualified firms, and the panel's recommendation for a contract will be coming before the board on the May 8th agenda.
Monica?
Yes.
You're talking about the construction?
Yes, the construction management general contract, yes. Those interested in participating in the Citizen Advisory Committee can submit a application online through our committee application process, and we'll be bringing those recommendations before the board in May so that we can have a committee in place by June. At this point in time, we've been unable to reach a consensus with the board on a date to complete the board goals. And so the dates in May are no longer available. And so if we're waiting to hear back to see if there are some days in June. So if you want to send us now days that would work best for you in June, that would be great. So that way we can try and get this piece of the process wrapped up. There was also a question in regards to whether or not the board would like to hear a presentation from PERS reform activist Tim Nesbitt, and if so, if this is something that the consensus of the board would like, we can see about getting something scheduled.
Oh, yeah.
We have several presentations already booked out, and so it might be a couple months, but if there is a consensus.
What does he represent?
There's PERS reform as far as what are some possible solutions to addressing the PERS unfunded liability. He's not a representative of PERS, he's an activist, and some different ideas that he is presenting to legislation as well as other.
I'm not in favor of this.
Okay.
I'd really like to hear what he has to say. I mean, I don't have to agree with everything he says, but we were talking about our budget and how we're looking at falling off a cliff, and PERS is a big part of it, so I'm eager to get more informed.
Is it possible he can send us an email and we can make a decision after we hear what he wants to present?
Sure, I can email him that. Is that okay?
Didn't the letter say something about materials as well?
I can't remember. I'd have to, yeah, I'll check the email and see.
Give us more information.
Yeah. And then there was an email that went out to each of you to your county commissioner email from the emergency manager or Eventbrite or something. It's in regards to the naval event that's going to be taking place on June 3rd at Camp Rylea. So if you haven't had an opportunity, please go online and make sure you register. It's very quick. You're simply entering your name and the entity that you're with. And last but not least, our next budget meeting with opportunities for public comment will begin on Wednesday, May 1st at 9 a.m. here in the Boyington building. So.
Can you explain a little bit more about that? Is that that's general public comments about the budget, and they will go first, and then we will have the budget?
The way that the agenda is typically set up is they can make comments in the beginning. We can open it up for comments in the beginning, but we also have opportunities prior to each functional area. So if somebody is wanting to speak, we don't know how many days the Budget Committee might end up convening. And so if they want to come and just kind of provide their comment right at the very beginning of the Budget Committee, otherwise they can come before the functional area. So if they want to speak in regards to something regarding public health, then they would have an opportunity before the public health budget is presented.
Is that, they normally have like a time limit, or?
Typically, it's 3 minutes, is similar to.
The classic 3 minutes? Okay.
Yes. And that's all that I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the business agenda, we have surplus farmhouse, fairgrounds.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Mike Audio, 399 31st Street. I'm the chair of the Clatsop County Fair Board, and I have with me John Lewis, who's our Fairgrounds Operations Manager. And I'd like to just take a few minutes and describe to you the kind of the chronology of the Fair Board over the last 10 years or so with respect to this farmhouse. And then I'll let John talk to you about what we're hoping to do with it. I was appointed to the Fair Board in 2010. My first Fair Board meeting was a presentation from Maul, Foster, Alongi, Bill Cook, the consultants, with our strategic plan for the fairgrounds site. One of the recommendations in our strategic plan was to figure out what we're going to do with some of these legacy buildings that were on the campus that we acquired in 1994, that the county acquired. As you, I'm sure all know, the site was the Oregon or the Astor Experimental Agriculture Station starting in 1913 until 1973, and then the county took it over, community college, for a few years. But it was a experimental dairy and experimental farm. There were 5 residences on the property. There, not at the time we took it over, but when it was constructed. Many barns and outbuildings and that sort of thing. So when we received the property, there was still a few houses and barns and outbuildings. So from that time in 2010, when we took our strategic plan, every year when we do our budget and our capital improvement plan, we have the question of, what are we going to do with this old farmhouse? I went through our minutes, not actually physically, but I've got them all scanned so I could just type in farmhouse. And just, as an example, starting in 2010, there was discussions on what we could do to remodel and use this farmhouse. There was a discussion in 2011 of possibly having Tongue Point Job Corps come out and use it for hands-on training to do the remodeling for the students. 2012, we commissioned a company to come and test it for asbestos and lead paint. They found some asbestos. We hired them to remediate that. I think it cost $8,000. So in 2012, we got it to a point where we actually could look at remodeling it and using it. And I'm just giving you some highlights of the minutes just so you'll know what we've been through to get to this point where we're at with the building. November 2012, the minutes where we had a long discussion. What are things that we could use this farmhouse for if it was remodeled and brought up to code? Is it worth keeping? We commissioned our fair manager, Gary Friedman, then to present us with possible uses, which he did the next month in December, is in the minutes. The possible uses we could have for this building would be office space, storage, sleeping quarters, conference room, possible company meetings. So we commissioned him to, at that time in December 2012, to solicit bids, talk to Tongue Point specifically. He went to Tongue Point and asked them, and they indicated that they would be willing to send some kids out, but that they would need a general contractor to work under. So Gary had Rickenbach Construction come out, look through it. They didn't give us a bid, they just gave us some general ideas. February 2013, we got a formal bid from Helixo Construction to bring the building up to code, and I'm not going to call it a remodel, but to repurpose it in its configuration. Then it would have been $150,000 in 2013. And what we would have gotten for the $150,000 was, I think you've probably all seen it, it's a charming looking farmhouse. That's the good point. The bad part of it was we had a charming farmhouse. It's a farmhouse, and it was built very small rooms, load-bearing walls. It just, what we would have got would have been not really usable for those purposes that we thought we would be able to use for it. We couldn't use it for business meetings, conference facility, because we would have to tear out walls, and that wasn't part of the bid. The bid was to get this building with small roofs. So at that time in 2013, we started attacking other parts of our strategic plan. We built a new storage facility on the foundation of another old farmhouse. We repurposed the dairy barn out there, put a new floor in it, put new electrical in it to make it an event facility, which has been popular for weddings and stuff. We put a lot of money in our arena. We had to put new bleachers. We put, what else did we did a lot of, put new circulation and fans. We bought the portable floor, which was a big spend, but that's what goes down right now, is going down for the Crab Festival that goes on every year. It was over $100,000. We replaced the storage building up on top. That was the equipment storage building with a new multi-purpose facility. And we completed a lot of much needed just deferred maintenance. Since John Lewis has been on, they've done a wonderful job of bringing that facility back up to where it should have been, but it's cost money. So the purpose of telling you all that isn't to say that, it's just to say that in terms of the priorities of our strategic plan, every year when we go through the process, this farmhouse doesn't fit. So now we've checked off a lot of the items on our strategic plan, and we look at what do we need now. What we need now at the fairgrounds are things like parking. We've got a 108-acre campus, but if you really break it down, we've got about 10 acres of usable space up on top of the hill. We've got a lot of hillside, we've got forest land, we've got bottom land, but where the actual fairgrounds facility are is about 10 acres. So looking at our options, we could use that space that the farmhouse is on for parking for another building. Also, in terms of future capital improvements, the last several years, just the county fair in terms of participants of youth and livestock has increased probably about double. So much that last year the arena was literally bursting at the seams. We had to move out rabbits, chickens, small animals into the dairy barn because there were more participants than there have ever been. I think there were double the number of beef and swine, and now we've got a new FFA program in the books that this will be the first year with a lot of new participants. So the Fair Board is looking in the future that what we need is more buildings where we can house fair activities. On our radar, what we're working on and trying to budget for in the future with our next bond levy is another multi-purpose facility that we could have horse events and large animal events and other events on. So I'm telling you all this to say that really at this point that farmhouse doesn't have a place in our future. There's not really anything that we can do with it. So the idea has been brought forth by the Fair Board to what can we do with it? That's what I'm going to let John talk to. So we don't have any desire to get rid of it or burn it down. It's just we have no use for it. The cost of making it useful to us would be well over the $150,000.
So that being said, just to sum it up, every wall in there is a load-bearing wall. And so if we spend $150,000 to refurbish this, in the end, we're going to have an old farmhouse. We could never open it up and use it for a meeting space or anything like that. So what we'd like to do, if we surplus the house, we'd like to auction it to see if somebody would be willing to tear it down. There are people who buy these things, will tear them down, refurbish the wood. We would love to go that route. My second step would be if nobody would even consider buying the house, you know, donate it to the fire department and let them do a learn to burn. And then worst case scenario, if they didn't want to handle it, then we tear it down. But then, you know, we go from making money to breaking even to now it's $30,000 to have it tore down. So that's where we're at with it. Yes.
One of the first choices here is if we auction the house, we can make some money. If you were to auction the house and someone were to buy it, then they would be responsible for moving it, is that correct?
Correct, yeah. We've talked to a few people and who actually move houses, and due to its location up on the hill, they said it would be nearly impossible to move it intact and get it out of there. But there are people who will actually tear it down stick by stick and refurbish the wood.
So if you did that, would you have to receive a price for that, or could you donate that rather than have it burned and consumed?
I guess I'm not sure of your question. So as far as if they chose to have it torn apart, they could receive funds for that. They would essentially auction it off.
Right, but does it have to be auctioned? So like the historic preservation, or you know, the class, the program
at the community college?
It can be donated to a nonprofit. Yeah. It could be auctioned, you know, to the public, and if the highest bid is $2, then, you know, it sells for $2.
Okay.
But
Some of these houses are old growth timber and whatnot in there.
Yeah.
I know my brother, I have several brothers who are in the trades, and he used to use, recycle the wood from torn down buildings. So is there a value in that house? Someone wants to come in and get that timber, or I don't, I mean, if they were to do the work and they would get all the wood, would that
Right.
even it out?
I believe so. I mean, there's definitely value in the wood, and some of the trim that's in there is definitely classic to that era. So it's definitely not something, you know, you could run down to Home Depot and grab today. So yeah, I do believe there is value to somebody who does that in refurbishing that sort of thing. But now whether we're going to get somebody who actually wants to do it, that.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be possible to, I have to tell you that your presentation was so good that you have changed my mind in the last 10 minutes. I was willing to fight for this building, you know, because it kills me, especially in rural Clatsop County. We have so much great old architecture. And so, you know, I'm a Grange fan. So I'm always in the mood to save. And I actually called our wonderful John Gudenberger and asked him to give me his opinion on it. And I think when I explained to him what you had put in your report about what the issues were, and I do commend the board, the Fair Board, for having worked so hard to reuse this building. John's recommendation was the building has its primary value is in the wood and whatever fixtures are left. And his plea was, don't burn it down. And I'm thinking, after what the chair said, if we could do something about maybe involving the CCC historic preservation folks, you know, in a tear down and reuse issue. So I think that would be, I'd love to give you all the authority to do whatever you want with it, but I also feel strongly that we have to treasure the wood I mean, we're at the point where we have no old-growth wood trees left.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
this is it. So I would plea for that. So something that kind of saves the wood and meets your needs. I can understand about the moving issue. That would be, I think, impossible to move, actually, because of the terrain. So you changed my mind, but please save the wood.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that was our first choice, is to have somebody come in and refurbish it. I don't believe we'll have too much trouble, but I hate to put a guarantee on something, because usually when I think that, you know, I get surprised.
Yeah.
So.
If we're throwing names around here, Tim Kennedy is somebody in town that does a lot of, I think, repurposes wood too, so.
Okay.
Yeah, John seemed to think that there were people who would love to have that wood. So
I can talk to my brother.
So we could have a motion now, and then we could discuss further.
So, Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the surplus of the farmhouse located on the fairgrounds property.
I second.
The clerk will call for the vote.
Were we going to have discussion? More discussion?
Sorry, yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
So we
Discussion.
trust your judgment, but you know what we want you to do, right? Thank you.
We will do our very best.
We believe you.
And we're going to be watching.
Is there, when would you, would there be a date? Would we be notified? Would it be advertised?
Yeah.
I should have asked that before.
We can make sure that it's included in the county manager's report
There we go.
when the advertisement happens.
Yeah, so that enough people can know about this. Is there further?
And is there someone that they would they talk to you, John, or Mike, who would they, if someone was interested in getting involved with this project, who would they talk to?
Yeah, they can get a hold of me. Yep.
And I would suggest do some really intensive networking and
Yes.
publicity.
Well, and that's,
I think that with the, the board's approval today, we'll put it on even on our Facebook site, that we're going to be looking at options for salvage of the old building, and I'm sure you'll get a response.
And I really would encourage you maybe to talk to the historic preservation people at the community college. They might have some ideas that we're not even thinking about, so.
okay.
Okay, is there further discussion?
I would just like to thank you all for putting so much time and effort and thought into this.
Yes.
And please build more, because the county fair is my favorite event of the year. And it was crazy to see what you all had to do last August in shifting stuff around. I thought, man, we need some more buildings.
It's quite the operation.
So it is moved and seconded that the board approve the surplus of the farmhouse located on the fairgrounds property. The pending question, shall we adopt the main motion to approve the surplus of the farmhouse located on the fairgrounds property? An aye vote will adopt the motion, and no vote will defeat the motion. The clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Webb?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Neppker?
Aye. The ayes are 5, the noes are 0. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Now we have the sheriff's return of sale from the March 26th auction.
Chair Nebiger and members of the board, I am bringing you another formality. Last time I was in front of you, you accepted the high bids from our last auction, and now I am asking you to approve the monies brought in and then the expenses, and what is left will be distributed to the taxing districts in accordance with ORS 275.
Madam Chair, I would move that the board adopt the resolution and order approving the sheriff's return of sale from the March 26th, 2019 auction.
Second.
It is moved and seconded that the board adopt the resolution in order approving the sheriff's return of sale from the March 26, 2019 auction. Is there any discussion?
I just want, the Daily Astorian gets a lot of money from us for this stuff. That's a significant form of revenue for them. I think it's worthwhile to support our local newspaper, but I noticed it cut into our profits significantly. That's an editorial comment. It's not really a question. Thank you.
Just to clarify, we are by law required to notice it 4 times, once a week for 4 weeks, so.
Okay, I feel better now, thank you.
And may I say I'm very grateful for active community newspaper.
Yeah.
I
It's worth
second
it.
that motion.
Yeah, worth it.
Is there any further discussion?
No.
The pending question is that the board adopt the resolution in order approving the sheriff's return of sale from the March 26, 2019 auction. An aye vote will adopt the motion, a no vote will defeat the motion. The clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Webb?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Nebaker?
Aye. The ayes are 4, and the noes are 0. I think I said 5 before, didn't I?
I think you did,
Yeah.
but it's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move on to the reconsideration of approved comprehensive plan update Citizen Advisory Committee bylaws, page 129. So,
Okay, are you?
Yes,
ready?
please,
Okay,
Gail.
Thank you.
Yes.
Gail Hendrickson, Community Development Director. On March 27th, the board appointed members to the Comprehensive Plan Citizen Advisory Committees and adopted bylaws for both the planning area committees and the countywide committee. At the last meeting, Chair Nebaker asked that the bylaws be brought back for reconsideration and further discussion. According to the Clatsop County Code, Section 1.04.030B, the committees are authorized but not mandated to prepare bylaws. So it's not necessary that they do have bylaws. It's at the committee's pleasure if they do wish to prepare them. Those bylaws then would come back before the board for final approval and adoption. Staff does not have any recommendation on what action the board should take. We are fine if you leave them as they currently exist, if you wish to amend them, or if you wish to strike them entirely. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
So is it your understanding the reason that I brought this up is because it's an ad hoc committee? It's not one of our standing boards or committees. And normally our ad hoc committees don't really have bylaws, do they?
Some of them do, not all of them, but the standing committees are required to have bylaws, but an ad hoc advisory committee is not.
Mm-hmm.
So, Madam Chair, in my experience, land use issues are some of the most contentious. It's so easy to go wrong and get sideways with each other when we're dealing with land use. So I really liked these bylaws. I especially liked on page 131, Section 2, to talk about the value of reaching consensus and empowered to seek opinions and represent their constituency and still participate in the give and take. I mean, it was really eloquent. Foster collaborative decision-making and consensus building. I mean, I thought it was a pretty inspiring document for a set of bylaws, so I liked it a lot. I think it's a good idea to include this and go forward with it because I think it'll help promote a better, easier outcome.
So I'd like to ask staff, do you think that if they need to reach consensus, this could slow the process down?
There's always a possibility that it can. I did have a discussion with Commissioner Nebaker before the March 27th meeting about whether we should use the word consensus or majority. Again, staff is fine with either one. I think that it's really dependent upon the advisory members as to, for lack of a better term, how well they're going to play together with each other. And that's, it's always possible that even with a majority trying to reach a majority, you can slow down the process. A consensus, trying to reach a consensus can certainly have that possibility as well.
So have you been through periodic review process before?
Not in this state. We had a similar process that was in Florida where I worked previously.
I've been through it twice. If we had to reach consensus, it would have taken more than our 2 years. It would have taken double, maybe triple. Does this the longer it goes, is there more cost to staff or not?
There's not more cost to staff. We've delayed starting the meetings simply because we know that there are more appointments coming. And now with this issue of are we going to have the bylaws or not have the bylaws or amend them? So we've kind of put that on hold for a few weeks while we go through this process. Again, staff does not have an opinion or a recommendation on this. It's completely at the pleasure of the board. So.
Counselor, it says each PACAC will endeavor to reach consensus. That doesn't mean that it's required. Is that your reading of that?
Yeah, that would be accurate.
And then later on, it says that the Robert's Rules of Order apply.
It does say that.
So does that open that up to a majority vote?
Arguably, yes.
Parliamentarian.
Madam Chair, the first motion that should be read is to reconsider. So you've been debating.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So if we have
Back
a
up a little
motion to reopen this, then we could discuss it.
Madam Chair, I move to reconsider establishing bylaws for the Comprehensive Plan Update Citizen Advisory Committee.
That wasn't one of the options.
Okay, where are we?
Isn't that what we need to do, parliamentarian? That's the motion to have if you want to hear these again.
I don't have a problem with reconsidering the motion.
Wait, there's a motion on the floor. We need a second.
I
Or
didn't
if there's no
understand the
sec-
motion enough to.
Okay, could you repeat the motion?
I believe Commissioner Thompson moved to reconsider establishing the bylaws for the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee.
And a point of order, did we already approve bylaws?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
So have these been rewritten?
No. If there's no second, then the motion dies, and I guess it just stays as it is.
Okay, fine.
I'm happy to second it to have a discussion, so I'll second it.
Okay.
I did it so we could talk about it, but I'm
Right.
telling you, I like these, so I'd rather they stayed.
Okay, so now we have a motion and a second for,
And the verb is?
Lisa, I don't have it written down. Do you have, can you put it on the screen? Is
It's
that-
been moved and seconded to reconsider establishing the bylaws for the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee.
Did you write it down?
Yeah, that's what she said.
Yeah, what
That's
she
right.
said, but I have to repeat it. Okay.
And the reason I'm doing this
No,
is
that's
because
fine.
you had concerns, because I don't have
No, that's
concerns.
fine, that's fine. It's my lack of writing it down is the reason I'm struggling here. Okay, so now we have a motion and a second. So it is moved and seconded that the board
Reconsider.
reconsider the bylaws 4. Did we have, what else do we have? Thank you. Thank you. Reconsider, the word reconsider the approval of the no. That isn't what was said. It was, is that what was said? Okay. Reconsider.
It's on the screen now.
Oh, thank you. Reconsider establishing bylaws for the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. Okay, thank you. So, discussion.
Ms. Hendrickson, the different comprehensive areas, the committee.
Excuse me, Commissioner Sullivan, I'm
Oh, I'm
sorry.
sorry.
No, you're fine. The parliamentarian has a comment.
The point of discussion is reconsideration, not the bylaws itself, so we could probably move to a vote on reconsideration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So move to,
So, and a vote to reconsider, an aye vote would move to reconsider, and a nay vote would leave them alone. Would not reconsider, would just leave them in place. Thank you.
But when do we discuss it?
The next step after you agree to reconsider the motion is then to discuss striking the bylaws.
right.
And if you don't want to discuss them, you just vote nay.
Okay, so now is the time for discussion.
No,
Right?
now's
No?
the time for the
Now's
vote.
the time to vote.
Now is the time to vote. Okay. So the clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
No.
Commissioner Webb?
No.
Commissioner Nebaker?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Motion fails because it's tied. So they're in place.
Fails. So it's 2 to 2. 2 yes, 2 no.
So the bylaws stay.
Bylaws stay.
Bylaws stay.
All right. Well, I wish them well. I hope that it does not slow down the process. I will be very surprised that it doesn't, but I
Editorial
hope it
comment.
doesn't. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the professional services agreement for Bugle Road Construction Engineering. Thank you.
So I'm Ted McLean, the interim Public Works Director. And so before you, we have the agreement that we've put before you with KPFF, the consulting engineers, for the construction of Bugle Road, which is in the North Coast Business Park, between 19th and Ensign Lane. And this is a prior contractor that or consultant that we had back in 2018. The contract expired, and we had the mitigation efforts that were put forth there, so we had to wait till that was completed, and now we can proceed with the construction of the road. So we're asking for your approval for this agreement.
Questions for staff?
No.
Is this the same area that they're also discussing a path or bicycle alongside of this? Isn't it the 19th Street?
That's on 19th. This will incorporate those things as well, bicycle path, yeah, and pedestrians.
Okay.
For both.
So that would link the bicycle path on Ensign with the bicycle path on 19th.
It'll connect those, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
And where is the CMH proposal? Is it east or west of this road?
East.
East.
It's east
Yeah,
of this road.
the Fort George is on the west side of Bugle, and CMH proposed is on the east side.
And the wetlands issue has been solved on both of those properties?
On this particular property, it's been solved, yes.
Well, this bisects.
Which this is specifically being put in for big beams.
Fort George.
Fort George.
Yes.
This is part of the agreement that we have with this development, and so it's specific to that project. This gives them their access to the property, and that's where the mitigation came from, is on this particular property.
Okay. Is there going to be mitigation required on the eastern CMH property?
That's for CMH to
Yeah.
determine in their due diligence process. That's their property.
Each
that-
one has to,
But we don't have any feel for that?
there's going to be mitigation on everything in there.
Everything in there is going to be.
I noticed on the KPFF drawing that there is, I mean, it's a, there's the road, and then there are driveways into access points, I assume, for CMH on the east and Fort George on the west. Is that what I'm seeing
Yeah.
in this? Okay. And they're structurally the same? I mean, what, the design looks as if they're equal.
Yeah, they're
Equal
the
curb
same.
cuts.
Yep.
So,
Mhm.
so CMH and Fort George would have to say, okay, this is what we want the curb cut to look like? Excuse me.
That's how it's been designed, so they're just meeting the requirements for the county and the state and the city of Warrenton.
Okay. I just want to say I've worked for years with KPFF, and of course, have enormous respect for them, so.
So, Madam Chair, I move to approve the professional services agreement with KPFF, Inc. in the amount of $66,735 for Bugle Road Engineering Services, and authorize the county manager to sign the agreement and any amendments.
I second.
Discussion?
Roads are really expensive, geez Louise.
They really are.
That's just the engineering.
Oh, baby, no, but there was $1 million in there. I thought, holy cow.
Expensive.
Yeah, when people talk about, oh yeah, just fix this road, no idea, no idea. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't restate the motion. It is moved and seconded to approve the professional services agreement with KPFF, Inc. in the amount of $66,735 for Bugle Road Engineering Services, and authorize the county manager to sign the agreement and any amendments. Is there further discussion? The pending question is, shall we adopt or approve the professional services agreement with KPFF, Inc. in the amount of $66,735 for Bugle Road Engineering Services, and authorize the county manager to sign the agreement and any amendments? An aye vote will adopt the motion, and no vote will defeat the motion. The clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Webb?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Nebaker?
Aye. The ayes are 4, the noes are 0. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Thank you. Moving on to increasing out-of-class pay for interim county manager. Page 171, Kelly Stiles.
I'm Kelly Stiles. I'm the Human Resources Director. Basically, everything I'm proposing is right in front of you in the agenda summary. To make it simple, staff is proposing that the board consider giving Monica a raise in her interim appointment as interim county manager. The math is traditional HR math, getting to the $1 amount that I got to and the percentage that I got to. And the other option is just simply doubling the standard out-of-class pay that county employees do receive, which is indicated in our personnel policies. But because this is your decision and currently your employee, you can determine whatever type of out-of-class you want. I was just kind of giving you a couple different options to start from. So I am here for questions.
Questions?
I don't have questions, I'm ready to make a motion.
Do the other commissioners have questions?
So I'm just going to make a motion, and we went south on this last time. I hope this works better. I move that the board approve an increase to the interim county managers out-of-class pay from 5% to 10% effective January 5th, 2019. So if there's a second for that, we can talk about it, and if there isn't, somebody else can make a motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, now I have a question.
Well-
How does the math of that work out?
Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. So the motion is that the board approve an increase to the interim county manager's out-of-class pay from 5% to 10% with the effective date of January 5th, 2019. Okay, discussion.
How does that compare in terms of total dollars to an increase to 13%? We're backing up 3 months.
It's here on the second page.
Yeah, it's on the second page. So if you were to go to a 13% increase, which is the staff recommendation, you would be at $143,255.20. If you were going to doubling the 5%, getting to a 10% increase, you would be at $136,616.17. Those numbers are based on the assistant county manager wage, not the current interim county manager wage. So there's a little bit of differentiation there.
Well, I understand that, but going back to January
5th.
Oh, I would have to, I can't think of that on the fly.
You can't
No, that's Monica's job.
Me neither. I can't even come close. So, yeah,
I can reassure you that there's enough money in the salary line item of the county manager's salary that the cost is going to be inconsequential, but substantial to Monica to recognize her for the things that she's been doing.
Absolutely, and if I could, I really want to recognize her service. I think 10% is just a better number for doing that. I'm absolutely delighted to go back to January 5th. She's absolutely earned it. She's had great performance. I certainly want to give her an increase, but I wanted us to start talking at 10% because sometimes what I see in a board is, yeah, let's just go to the top of the thing already. I'd rather start us a little lower, and then if we discuss it and want to move up higher to the 13%, we can do that. But I'd rather start at 10%, which is a doubling.
Mm-hmm.
In my 6 years, we've never had someone do both positions. And I think she's doing them both beautifully. I would prefer that we take the staff's recommendation.
I have some questions. So she's currently wearing many different hats. And I know that when we brought her on to be the assistant manager, county manager, she was paid in this fund for the budget department and this fund for the assistant management fund, manager fund. So where does this, when we're talking about this kind of increase, that's her, can you explain how that breaks down?
Well, excuse me, but we have a motion.
Oh, I thought we were discussing
We're
the
discussing, but we're discussing, this is for the commissioners, I believe, to discuss. I think we need to form our questions to staff before we have the motion.
Oh, really? Is
We
that in
weren't,
our
we weren't
rules?
ready to. Well,
That's,
okay.
no, I'd like clarification from somebody that we can know,
Well,
once
let's
we,
ask the parliamentarian.
well, once, once we make a motion, we are discussing the motion, right? And we can no longer ask staff questions at that point?
What?
You can still ask questions, but it's really debate.
Yeah. Yeah,
But part of the debate is information from staff.
you bet.
I guess, I just wanted clarity for myself, so then I could then discuss with other commissioners. That's all I was asking for. And I don't have access to that information, so I was asking.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I cut short the time for asking questions for staff.
I don't think you cut it
No,
short.
we're allowed to ask staff questions while we're debating because we want to be informed by their expertise as we discuss it among ourselves. Because as we discuss it among ourselves, there'll be more need for more information from staff on complex questions, which this is.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson.
So,
That's-
if I may, so this percentage increase is for the section of her being the interim county manager? Or it's just, or is all that out the window now? This is just her current salary while she is the interim county manager?
Yes.
Okay.
That is correct.
So we are just considering a raise due to the amount of work that she's taken on is above 5% of what her former workload was when she was an assistant county manager.
I think I understand your question. So when Cam made his announcement that he was retiring, he made a recommendation back in October, I believe, to award Monica with a 5% out-of-class increase in her current rate of pay as assistant county manager. That's a standard in our personnel policy of out-of-class pay, 5% added to the employee's current rate of pay.
For an assistant county manager.
For anything.
For anything.
Okay.
If they're performing duties outside of their standard job description, they are eligible for a 5% out-of-class pay.
Okay.
So that's what Monica is working under currently, 5% out of class on the assistant county manager salary. This in front of you is merely recommending an increase to the out-of-class pay from a 5% to either a 10% or to the proposed 13% that I created by doing my HR math, essentially. Does that answer your
helps.
question?
And so, and then this would, the other questions that are above is, this is while she is in the role of the interim county manager.
Yes. Once we hire a county manager, she will return to her salary as the assistant county manager.
Okay.
Yes, this is a temporary increase to her interim rate of pay.
Okay.
We could have an amendment to the current motion if a commissioner wishes to.
No.
We can't?
No, I mean, I'm not agreeable to it.
So my understanding.
Yeah, we can amend the motion.
Theoretically.
To go back to the original recommendation, if Commissioner.
What is the, I don't know what the recommendation is.
15%.
This is here, okay, so this one. This is what staff recommended, this one on page 172.
Well, I know, but.
Okay, then the motion on the floor now that's been seconded.
Oh,
is
I'm
that it
sorry.
was decreased from
I'm
13%
sorry.
to 10%.
I'm sorry.
Going to January 5th.
Right.
So my understanding is the motion on the floor is the 10% so that, and seconded, so we can discuss it. But from what I heard you say, Commissioner Thompson, is this is an opening round of discussion. And as we discuss it, we can discuss changing the percentage.
But your motion was to make it retro, the staff recommended April 1st.
Yeah, and I changed it to
your motion
January 5th.
was to January 5th. That's
So I made it
Thanks.
a longer duration, but a lesser percentage.
Do you have the figures on that, of why you did that?
Because she started doing the work on January 5th.
Okay, but do you know what the dollar amount
No, I
difference
don't know what
would
the
be?
dollar amount is, but I'll tell you what, she started on January 5th, so she's earned it from January 5th. But I think 10% is a doubling, and I think that's fair, but I think it's also fair that it starts from the day that she started the work.
That hadn't stuck in my mind that you added that time on. I considered that two different things. Because I think it's determining the percentage, and then at what point does it start. I personally don't have a problem with it starting retroactively, that doesn't
Yeah.
bother me. So it seems like there's two questions here that we're,
Yeah, but I made the motion to be from January 5th because I wanted to be clear what I wanted.
Okay.
5% from January 5th, because I thought that was fair on both
Thought it was
parts of it.
10%.
10%.
I'm sorry,
An
sorry.
additional
And a
5%.
doubling of the 5% to 10%, just to be clear, since January 5th. Too many 5s and 10s in here. We're playing cribbage, aren't we? No.
You could just go with 13.
Yeah.
Our dilemma, Kelly, is that I don't know the financial difference. I just don't, I mean, if we go back 3 months and add 3%, I just don't, I don't know what's best for her. I don't know what the larger number is what I'm saying. So it's
The
really.
difference between the two is the difference between 143 and 136, and that's for a year. So it's been a quarter or a third of a year, so a third of $7,000 is basically what you're looking at.
It's not a lot of money.
More.
Say that.
Less or more?
Yeah, I can't. I didn't hear you completely, Heather. I'm sorry. The difference is?
Well, math is not my strong point.
Well, I was going to say math from a lawyer. This
But
is great.
the difference, you've got two numbers, 143,000, 136,000, and the difference between those is $7,000 a year for the 3%, and you've done 4 months of that 3% if you go back to January 1st. So you're looking at roughly. Thank you for the math.
Look at that. He's
Which
amazing.
way?
He is so amazing.
So is that less or the same or more than what was recommended by staff?
Ms. Stiles, did you intend to have this increase beginning in the next paycheck, or did you have a time that you had?
Well, as soon as possible. I picked April 1st because we're in that month of that pay period of April. But it can be retroed back to however far you wish. It's just some paperwork that I am happy to fill out. Really just need a date, need an amount, and I'll get it down to payroll, and it can happen.
No, we understand that. I think it's just we need to clarify the motion. So the motion.
So there is a motion, and we could amend it if, I don't know if this is what you're thinking, but it could be, we could keep the date of January 5th, and we can go to the 13% as staff recommends. Because the date was up for, whatever date we decided.
I'd like to call the question on Commissioner Thompson's.
Okay?
Do we have to vote for that? Don't we have to all
That means there's
approve?
no more discussion.
I'd like to call the question.
Okay. So the pending question is, shall we adopt?
No.
No? Yes?
I think they have to.
The question's been called, and so you have to vote on the question, which ends
Right.
the debate.
Right.
So
We have to vote on
say
it.
all those in favor of ending debate.
Oh, that's right. Okay. All those in favor of ending debate? So do we call the roll?
Commissioner Webb?
Nay. Oh, excuse me.
This is for ending
We're
debate.
pending debate. My motion. Okay. Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
No.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Nebaker?
No. So it fails.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment. I can't do that? Oh, I would like, all right. What I was hoping to do is make an amendment to Commissioner Thompson's amendment to make it retroactive 13%.
So, Commissioner Thompson made a motion, not amendment. So you're amending the main motion to strike 10% and insert 15.
Right.
That's the motion.
I make a motion to strike 10% and put in 13 and have the pay retroactive to January 5th.
I second that motion.
Oh. Okay. So the amendment is that the board strike the 10% and add 13%. And we have to have a second, right, on that?
Commissioner Webb seconded.
Oh, you did? I'm sorry. Okay. It's moved and seconded that the amended motion is to strike the 10% and add 13%. Is there discussion?
I'd be interested in hearing what Commissioner Thompson has to say about that.
No, I just wanted to talk about it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, does that feel?
Okay. Without further discussion, the pending question is on the floor. This is the motion to strike the 10% and add 13%. And then we go back to the main motion?
You got to vote.
Okay. An aye vote will amend the motion, and no vote will defeat the amendment. Clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Webb?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Nebaker?
Aye. Okay, so now we have the amendment. It's approved. So now we go back to the main motion that the board approve an increase to the interim county manager's out-of-class pay from 5% to 13% as of January 5th, 2019.
Retroactive, too.
Now what?
Call the roll.
Is there more discussion?
Nope, done.
I'd like to ask the HR person, Ms. Stiles, does that seem like that's clear, that would be retroactive and then moving forward?
Yeah, the paperwork would read effective January 5th, 2019, with a salary of $143,255.20, which is a 13% increase in Monica's salary as the assistant county manager.
Or it would be the interim.
But the 13% increase applies to her assistant county manager rate. That would become her interim county manager rate.
Then just to be clear, when we hire, because I think you said this already, just to hammer it down one more time, when we hire a permanent county manager, then what is Ms. Steele's?
She would go back to her assistant county manager rate, which is on the first page, which is $124,196.52.
Thank you.
Further discussion?
Does that need to be put into the motion, or is it understood as it is?
No.
Okay.
That's understood.
Okay, just wanted to clear it.
Could be part of the minutes, just to make it clear.
Okay, the pending question is, shall we adopt the main motion that the board approve an increase to the interim county manager's out-of-class pay from 5% to 13%, effective date of January 5th, 2019? An aye vote will adopt the motion, and no vote will defeat the motion. The clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Webb?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Nebaker?
Aye. The ayes are 4, the noes are 0. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Or is adopted. Moving on to the dissolution of Farm Forest Ad Hoc Committee.
So wait, what about?
Oh, did we miss something?
Yes.
Yeah, the Planning Commission.
Oh, sorry. Yes. The Planning Commission recommendations on draft housing strategic report. Thank you.
I think we as a board would like to thank Ms. Steele for all your work that you've been doing. So
Yay! Thank you, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Not only the time commitment, but you've made some wonderful decisions. We've had several crises in this time period, and I really applaud the aplomb with which you have handled them.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Good progress.
Ms.
Hendrickson.
Yes, thank you. At the April 9th Planning Commission meeting, the board was given the Planning Commission was given the opportunity to review the draft recommendations in the housing study that the board had a presentation on the following evening. The Planning Commission wanted to pass along some thoughts and comments for the board's consideration. When they went through the study, the planning commissioners highlighted 5 areas specifically that they wanted the board to take under consideration. That included perhaps instructing staff to review the parking standards for residential development to make sure that they're appropriate and not too excessive. That different types of housing products and different price points of housing products should be integrated and not segregated into separate zoning areas or areas of the county, that they should be mixed together to provide that social strata there. That higher density and the highest density developments be located in the incorporated areas where they do have access to utilities like water and sewer, and they're not just on well and septic. And that the county also consider allowing more accessory dwelling units within areas of unincorporated county. And they very strongly, and they asked me to emphasize strongly, ask that you consider limiting short-term rentals in unincorporated areas of the county. So staff has brought those forward. They're here for your discussion and any consideration that you'd like to give them. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question. So who is it that would consider limiting the number of short-term rentals?
That would be you as the board.
Okay.
Well, we would have the authority actually in all of these, the final authority.
Yes.
Would come from the staff and planning commission.
So the planning commission would make recommendations and then...
Well, these are your recommendations to you as you move forward with the recommendations in the housing study. But they asked that the board take these concerns and comments under consideration in helping to shape your path forward as you consider the recommendations of the housing study.
But this strongly consider limiting is...
The strongly
vague.
was their emphasis.
It's very vague. It's too vague for me to... Yeah.
Well, the strongly was there, not that you should they wanted to emphasize that they really wanted the board to consider limiting short-term rentals. So I could have left that out and just said they really wanted that to be emphasized. That's why the word strongly is in there.
Okay, so the planning commission is asking us to come up with these things. They're not making recommendations. So they're saying consider allowing more accessory dwelling units, but they're not making recommendations of how they see that. Like, I mean, they want us to come up with numbers?
That was not necessarily what they were asking. I think when you look at that draft housing study that you were presented with at your last meeting, there were several areas and recommendations that the consultants had put forward. At this point, the housing study is not final. You have not made any decisions or recommendations about which of those final recommendations you would like staff to move forward with. So as you go through that process of receiving a final document and making any decisions that you want to make regarding how the county should proceed with those recommendations, they just wanted to put forth these items to say, please keep this in the back of your head as you pick and choose what you want to move forward with.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that you should, as the board, come up with the final number or a recommendation to say, put them in these zoning districts or don't put them here, or limit X number of short-term rentals. They just wanted you, as you consider those options, to know that there was support for certain things that the Planning Commission wanted to put forward.
Okay. I think I understand. All right, so we could choose to adopt some or all of these bullet points.
Yes, or
Okay.
none.
So maybe they could be numbered?
Well,
One,
I have a point of
two,
order.
3, 4, 5?
Are we-
Would that be all right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the action that we are being asked to take is to approve their recommendations?
No, I don't think that they would even need a motion. I think this was
That's what
brought
I-
forward more for
Yeah,
discussion,
this is
just to make you aware of what the Planning Commission wanted you to be aware of.
Thank you. I think that's operative.
So it's your understanding, if I may, that the Planning Commission, looking at the housing study that we just had presented to us, and some of these are in mesh with what they recommended. Is that correct? Because I remember him saying about the parking issue and about the high density developments. I remember these points. I remember him saying at the. So are they just agreeing with the housing study or what?
Yes, I think they're, for the most part, agreeing with it. They didn't offer comments on specifics, but again, these were things that the Planning Commission really wanted to emphasize were important to them, so that you have that input moving forward as you make a decision about what you want to move forward with as a board.
Okay, so we don't need a motion
No,
to do this?
we really don't. It was
Okay.
more provided for information and discussion
All right.
purposes only, so.
So noted.
I'd like to make a comment. Actually, Commissioner Sullivan, I don't think the references that the consultant made to some of these issues were primarily aimed at urban areas.
Okay.
And these kinds of issues are very different when you're in a rural area. And I and a number of other planners who I have talked to were disappointed in the study in general because of the lack of creative ideas for rural planning. And so many of their recommendations were just very urban focused. And I asked the question of the interim county manager about who manages this contract. And her response was that the county does.
The county we're the ones who have the contract with the firm, and the cities paid us, and then we're paying the firm. The scope of work was already determined when we drafted the contract with the input from the cities. And so, so as far as what was asked of them to provide, it was for all 5 cities and the county. And so it was an encompassing scope of work.
Right. My issue was that, especially since on the advisory committee to this contract, there was no county representation, was there?
No county commissioner.
No county commission representation.
There was not.
There was not.
Yeah.
And we put in half the money.
Mm-hmm.
And so the consultants certainly implied during their presentation that they might have money left over. Does anybody know the extent to which that is the case?
We have not received an invoice from them recently, so I don't know, as far as the most recent work that they've done, how much of that is going to be billed out as to what we've already paid.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so we can follow up with them and ask them to provide us with their most recent invoice, so that way we can get an idea as to how much money is remaining.
That would be nice. I would like to express that I felt that as, contributing 50%, we certainly didn't mean to exclude the cities from that, but that we got a very weak consideration of the rural areas that make up most of the county. And as I say, I was very disappointed that they weren't more best practices oriented for rural development. So the only thing I would kind of warn about is the idea of higher density only within incorporated areas. That precludes some very innovative ideas for rural development, and I think I asked them specifically about the hamlet idea that a lot of rural areas are adopting, where you put in some kind of a man-made sewer system and communal water, which we're used to doing actually in our rural areas. So I was just hoping that maybe we could say to them, well, guys, if you have any money left over in this contract, could you beef up your recommendations, especially including best practices in rural areas? And that it would be especially timely since we're redoing our comp plan. It would just be kind of perfect stuff.
I think what I remember asking the studies person about the higher density outside in the unincorporated areas, and what the discussion was is exactly what you're saying. The infrastructure is a problem, and that's why they recommended that they keep it within the incorporated areas, because the infrastructure is already there. And we saw tonight the expense of doing a very brief new road. And I know some of the roads I've been on in this county, it'd be kind of tricky to have a lot heavier traffic on those roads, which might come with a larger, denser population area. Isn't that one of the concerns?
It is a concern, because then all those infrastructure costs do raise the overall cost of the housing, because somebody has to recoup that cost.
Or not. We can go down to Arch Cape. I'll take you on a tour.
But Ms. Hendrickson, when you look at these considerations that brought forth by the Planning Commission, I feel like we have a strong Clatsop County Planning Commission, and they're interacting with the housing study that you're disappointed in. But is your judgment that what the Planning Commission is bringing forth seem reasonable, and that we would consider them for going forward with them?
Yeah, I think they're all very reasonable requests, so maybe controversial in terms of short-term rentals, but certainly things that should be considered.
Big impact.
Yeah.
Big impact. And I'll be glad to have the Ethics Commission come and talk to us about actual and potential conflicts of interest too, because I think those are in play sometimes, and we need to look at those.
Concerning.
I'll be glad to go forward with this.
Conflicts of interest?
What? I don't understand.
Well, let's just deal with it when the Ethics Commission comes. They're going to come soon, right? End of June?
Is it the end of June that the training?
Yeah, that'll be good.
You mean within the housing study? That seems like that's a pretty serious thing to just put out there. I'd like to know more information about that.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that, about when the Ethics Commission is here.
No, why don't you, you've put it out there. You're implying that one of the commissioners has a conflict of interest?
Let's save it for when the Ethics Commission comes.
I am very uncomfortable with that comment. I don't think it's...
As am I.
I don't think that's all right at all, to have that out there. We don't make accusations without being able to back it up. As far as I can tell, no one on this commission has any conflict of interest about any of this.
So,
all right.
no action is to be taken.
No action is to be taken, that's right. Moving on to thank you. You'll be part of this too. The dissolution
You can't get rid of me.
Of the Farm Forest Ad Hoc Committee.
Okay, so back in 2015, the Board of Commissioners at that time did appoint the ad hoc committee to work with the Planning Commission to update the code to incorporate the latest Oregon statutes regarding farm and forest regulations. So the board, or the ad hoc committee completed that work, and the board adopted those amendments in July of last year. At that time, we had some people come forward, including one of the members of the ad hoc committee, who expressed concerns that perhaps we had not adopted enough uses in certain zoning districts. And so we went back and reconvened the committee. We met in August. We did not get any final answer in August. Our September meeting was continued because of the Dollar General hearing, and then we placed it on hold, waiting for the Oregon visitor OCVA to hold their agritourism summit, which they did back, I think, in February of this year here in Astoria. So we got the ad hoc committee back together in April finally, and I think given the discussion that we had at that meeting, I think there was a lot of misunderstanding about what the board had adopted in the residential agriculture zones back in July of last year. So at the end of the April 9th meeting, the consensus of the ad hoc committee was that their concerns had been addressed, that we did not need to make any further revisions at this time to the farm and forest codes, and they are asking that the ad hoc committee be dissolved. And that, I believe we do need a motion on, correct? Yes.
So, Madam Chair, I move that the board dissolve the Farm Forest Ad Hoc Advisory Committee.
Second.
It is moved and seconded that the board dissolve the Farm Forest Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. Is there any discussion? Pending question is that the board dissolves the Farm Forest Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. An aye vote will adopt the motion, a no vote will defeat the motion. The clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
Commissioner Webb?
Aye.
Commissioner Nebaker?
Aye.
Thank you.
The ayes have it. 4 yes, no, 0. And the motion is adopted.
We're almost at 3 hours. Can we take a bio break? And
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Let's take a 2-minute break.
Do you
2
wanna-
minutes. It's 9 o'clock. The Clatsop County Board of Commissioners will now meet in executive session. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192. You didn't? Oh. Okay, good of the order, sorry.
Never mind.
Does anyone have something that needs to go on next month's agenda?
I've got a bunch of things that I pulled out that I requested to have on the agenda. So
Business items,
these are business.
okay?
So I don't need to talk about them now, but I'd like to pass them out now, and I'd like us to discuss them because I'd like them on our next meeting's agenda. Is that agreeable?
Pass them out.
I've already sent them to you. They weren't typed.
I don't know what this, there's, you have, okay, here, pass that down.
So there's several pages?
No, these are requested agenda items.
Do you have another one? Okay.
Here you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As, we already addressed this. We can do this in a work session,
actually,
in our rules meeting.
Okay, so
Yeah, we can do this in our rules meeting, not on the agenda.
it's been a mystery to me all the time I've sat on the Clatsop County Board of Commissioners, what a commissioner does to get an item on the agenda. Because when I talked to the previous chair, I was routinely rebuffed. So as far as I know, we had no procedure, we had no criteria, we had no way of moving forward for a commissioner who wanted to add an item to the agenda for general discussion. So I'd like to get clear and make things more visible. I'd like us to be able to talk about more and hope that that improves our effectiveness and our capacity to represent the people who elected us. So I have some requested agenda items, and it's new, so I don't know how smooth they are. They're also related to the county liaison assignments. I understand we're going to be looking at our liaison assignments.
right.
When is that?
July.
July? How,
6-month review.
we've never done that before. How did that happen?
You guys had requested it at a meeting a couple months ago, and then it, oh, sorry, go ahead, Teresa.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it was because of BOPTA, because we needed to pick a new chair, because the time when you pick liaison appointments, the BOPTA has already started.
Is that it? Okay.
I think it started
And then there
with
was also
BOPTA.
the conversation just in regards to the liaison appointments and kind of what's working and what isn't for some commissioners and stuff. And so it was decided to do kind of a 6-month review.
Right, right. That's my memory also.
Happen. It's kind of like the volunteer appreciation. Missed it.
That's my understanding.
But I did look at the parliamentarians' material and thought about what's our volume of business, and it's related to the things I've asked to discuss, which is about basically the commissioner roles, the commissioner reports, the duration of them. I don't know what problem we're solving by limiting the duration of reports to place constraints on the content. I don't understand what the problem is. I think it makes sense to put them on the agenda when people are still here and fresh. And the inclusion is all of the liaison assignments. So, I've got copies of those. So I just want us to have a fuller discussion of what our role is, because I think we have some fundamental differences of opinion, and if we talk about them, I think it's much more likely that we can work them out. So that's what I'm happy to consider doing. I ordered an Oregon Blue Book, and I'm going to put it up, or ask someone else to put it up, in the commissioner's office. This is kind of like an or an OED. It's a little reference book. If you want to know about what goes on in Oregon, it's just a good thing to have. So it's a reference book to enrich the commissioner's office up on the 4th floor of 800 Exchange, if you would. Thank you. I keep talking about economy and looking at average wages. I think I've got enough here. Here's one for you. I want to pass those. One of the concerns I have is how do we have an adequate tax base, and how do we have, oh, you got the maps too, good. All right, here. The one for Kathleen too?
Yeah, there's enough.
Okay. Looking at forestry, I mean, you know, we're passionate about trees. We love our trees, and we want to honor them. How do we look at adequate tax base and adequate family income, and how do we tailor various policies? Have you got all the papers, Kathleen? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we have excess of the matrix, but not of the...
Of the maps? I got a ton of maps. Here, here's my maps. We got maps.
We got a map. And so, Teresa.
And what I'm looking at is not only here in Clatsop County, but our relationship with our partners, because that whole connection of Clatsop County with our partners in the region and our partners around the state. Is there another one for Brenna? Yes. If you look at Clatsop County, our average private sector wages is something under $36,000. The forestry and logging average is almost $53,000. Wood products manufacturing, almost $61,000. Truck driving, over $47,000. But leisure and hospitality is $22,691. That's the average wage in 2017. And the indicators of poverty and the associated, I want to say, despair and social problems and suffering. I just want us to think about that in dollars and cents as we look at how to save and heal the planet, to also look at how do we take care of each other when we're doing that. And so these are data about that. And I wanted to present those and think about that. Tell you that we're still working on that modular housing, because if we can manufacture modular housing here and all around rural Oregon, I just think it'd be a good thing. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you for the information.
Yes, Commissioner Sullivan.
I have something.
That's upside down.
Upside down. For the good of the order, I was given this plaque, so I'm going to pass it on to the county. I don't know where all the plaques at the county, if there's a plaque heaven or anything for these, but these.
What is this for?
I was asked, I guess I was one who, I stepped forward and everybody else stepped back, but I actually quite enjoyed it. I went, so they have my understanding is when a cruise ship comes to town and hasn't been here before, it gets met by city officials and the port and now a county person. But I didn't know everybody was bringing gifts to the party. And so Bruce Connor gave me a can of Josephson's tuna that when I shook hands with the captain, I could say, and here's from the county. They had a nice plaque of their own to give them. And then, so I guess it's just an exchange of plaques. But it really was a beautiful ship. I had never been on one of those before, and it was really something to see all that they offered their customers, and I know that the cruise ships are bringing very important revenue into this area. And so I felt very lucky to go, and if I get asked again and nobody else beats me to it, I'll go again, and I don't know what I'll bring them, but we might get another plaque, so.
We can put that in the county Board of Commissioners office.
I think so, yes, all right. But it was a beautiful ship. It's like 2,700 guests could be on there. I think, I'm not sure if I got the number right, but I remember when I heard the number, I thought, that's bigger than everybody who lived in my hometown. So, and it's quite impressive. Where I work, I can see the cruise ships out the window, and to see these, these ships move in and move out, it's really something to see. So I want to thank Celebrity Eclipse for this commemorating the inaugural call of that ship. So that's all I have.
All right. So are we going to have an executive session?
Oh,
Can,
okay. Oh, I forgot.